Hi, I'm Joseph Brown with the Liquefied Gas Carrier NCOE, and you're watching LGC TV.
Hello again. I'm Lieutenant Commander Dallas Smith, the Detachment Chief here at the Liquefied Gas Carrier National Center of Expertise. Today we are very fortunate to have with us Mr. Tim Myers of the U.S. Coast Guard's Office of Design and Engineering Standards. Today he's going to present to you the history and content of the 2016 IGF Code. So with that, here's Mr. Tim Myers.
Hello and welcome to today's training video. I'm Tim Myers with the Coast Guard's Office of Design and Engineering Standards, and today we're going to talk about design standards for gas-fueled vessels, more specifically the IMO's International Code of Safety for ships using gases or other low-flashpoint fuels, also known as the IGF Code. Liquefied natural gas, or LNG, has quickly become a leading alternative fuel for reducing maritime air emissions and complying with the emission control area limits adopted in recent MARPOL Annex 6 amendments. However, the use of LNG fuel comes with added risks due to its cryogenic and low flashpoint nature. To address these risks, the International Maritime Organization, IMO, recently finalized and implemented the IGF Code as a major international standard that sets the bar for safety in design and installation of shipboard fuel systems using LNG and other alternative low flashpoint fuels. First, I want to give you a little background on development of the IGF Code, and then let's take a look at the scope, layout, and contents of the code. Finally, we will wrap up by looking at the IMO's ongoing work for future development of the code. In 2004, Norway first proposed to IMO the need for international standards for vessels using LNG as fuel. At that time, 2 LNG-fueled OSVs had just been built in Norway, and the government's experience in trying to develop national requirements with no global standards in place highlighted the need for an international code to promote consistency and safety given the risks associated with LNG. Work began in earnest in 2005, and by 2009, IMO had published interim guidelines for gas-fueled ships while continuing to work on a code. In June 2009, IMO published interim guidelines for gas-fueled ships under IMO Resolution MSC 28586 as a means of providing initial guidance for administrations to use while the code was still under development. Major class societies including ABS, DNVGL, and LR began developing class rules or guides for gas-fueled ships based on these interim guidelines. The IGF Code was finalized and adopted at IMO in June 2015 and went into force on 1 January 2017. The IGF Code is an international standard for the safe design of ships that use natural gas or other low flashpoint fuels and is a mandatory code under SOLAS. The code applies to all new and existing SOLAS ships with systems using gases or other low flashpoint fuels installed after the code entered into force. The IGF Code of course addresses design requirements for fuel system components, but it also covers important safety features to address all the risks posed by LNG and low flashpoint fuels. Key provisions of the code include mandatory risk assessment, design and construction requirements for fire protection, fuel containment, tank arrangements, material selection, electrical installations, and ventilation systems, standards for manufacture and workmanship, and training and operations. Right now, the IGF Code only includes prescriptive requirements for natural gas as fuel, typically stored on board as LNG. Other low flashpoint fuels are addressed through general goal-based requirements that must be applied by a vessel's flag administration through an alternatives process spelled out in the code. Subsequent revisions to the code will incorporate prescriptive requirements for other low flashpoint fuels such as methyl and ethyl alcohol, ethane, propane, and low flashpoint diesel. Now let's look at the IGF Code's content and layout. As I just mentioned, the scope of the code was meant to address the safe design of vessels that use any gas or other low flashpoint fuel. so potential fuels such as ethane, propane, and hydrogen, as well as alcohol-based fuels and low-flashpoint diesel fuel, all fall under the IGF Code. The code is structured in a layered approach, with general goals and functional requirements up front at the beginning of each chapter. These apply regardless of the low-flashpoint fuel you're designing for. Parts with a dash and number, for example A-1 and B-1, are devoted to a specific fuel, while parts without numbers apply to all fuels. The majority of the code in content and number of pages is contained within Part A1. This chapter covers the specific vessel layout and system design requirements for ships using natural gas as fuel and makes up about 70% of the code. So far, prescriptive requirements have only been finalized for natural gas, so this first edition of the IGF Code only specifically addresses natural gas as fuel, both as liquefied natural gas and compressed natural gas. Work is already underway, though, on detailed requirements for methyl and ethyl alcohol fuels, which could be added in the next major update to the code. The IGF Code still applies to vessels using fuels other than LNG, but through an alternatives process. Vessels using other fuels are evaluated using the goals and functional requirements found in the front of each chapter of the code. Let's wrap up by talking about some future IGF Code developments that are in the works at IMO here in the spring of 2019. The IGF Code is an ongoing agenda item under the IMO's Carriage of Cargoes and Containers subcommittee. This subcommittee meets for a full week each September in London, with work also taking place between sessions by correspondence group via email. Current work includes developing requirements for methyl and ethyl alcohol fuels, fuel cells, and low-flashpoint diesel fuel. So in the near future, we should see amendments to the code in each of these areas, although some of the work may first come out in the form of interim guidelines. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this video has given you some appreciation for the background, content, and future developments of the IMO's IGF Code.